The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we have Karla Rodriguez, Director of Corporate Social Responsibility at Wana Brands. If you don't know about Karla, she is doing some amazing stuff with social responsibility, with the projects that are going on to support communities, and it's really something that as an industry we have a rich background in, and we need to revisit it and really support it, especially as when I was reading the other day, cannabis is the 5th largest crop in the United States. Karla, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today, Sarah. I'm really excited to chat.
So, what was your first cannabis experience?
Well, can I tell you two?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first one doesn't actually involve consumption. It just involves my cool status in middle school. So actually, my mom's boyfriend, when I was a kid, worked stage crew at a lot of local concerts where we lived, and he would often get free swag, free shirts, right? That's something we're not strangers to in our industry. And I would just wear what he gave me to school, because I thought I looked really cool. And one time I actually wore a fish shirt to school. I think I was 13. And another day there was like a Blues Traveler shirt where the cat's like smoking the spliff on the shirt. And anywho, by the end of the day, the rumor, and I was like such a square, like this was not true, founded completely in untruths here. But by the end of the day, there was a rumor that I was the one that had like the best source product to get hooked up, which, I did not, refute necessarily, because it was definitely, middle school was not fun for me, like it was for a lot of kids. So I am, I am grateful for those shirts.
Yeah, you got to get your cred while you can.
Exactly. It was like major street cred for me. And then, the actual like first time of consumption that I can remember, I've always been a bit of a late bloomer. I'm a dare kid, right? So we all got like the fear of God put in us when we were in elementary school about how drugs would just like destroy our lives and blah, blah, blah. And so I was actually about 20, 21, and I won't name the family out of respect, but I was babysitting at the time. I was a nanny, and one of the parents, we just had a casual conversation, and one of the parents I worked for realized I'd never tried cannabis before. And so they actually gave me some cookies to try. And this was before regulation was a thing. And so the first batch I brought home, and note I said the first batch because there is a story there, put them in the freezer. I was like, 2021 at the time. I was still living with my mom, and one day I was like, I'm gonna give it a try. I'm gonna go and take this out for a test drive. And there were about 5 cookies in the bag, and I noticed that they were all gone out of the freezer. So my mom had been inadvertently just munching down on some edibles over time.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, and she never, the weird thing to me, she must have, it must have really helped her like get to sleep, right? Like she never knew that there was really anything up. So that was like mind blowing to me. I think I actually asked her about a decade later about it, and she was like, I had no idea. But then, so they gave me a second batch, and I did just the classic, ate one, nothing happened, ate another whole one. Oh. And I was, lucky for me, it's a funny thing, but I was just straight up traveling through time. I was like convinced that I was like back in elementary school again and was going to have to go to school the next day. And it was just like not a great feeling to be like, oh no, I'm 7 years old and now I have to go to school. So anyways, that was my first time. And I luckily have learned a lot from that time.
You know what I call that?
What?
The after school special moment.
I am. I am the ABC, the after school special to a T. Like, It was like even I was the babysitter. Like, how did this happen? So yeah, so I absolutely after school special kid. That was me, and from there, lucky enough to have some friends that guided me along the way. Although I will tell you, the really cruel joke with being at Wana Brands which is as we all know, it's a phenomenal product, that we make at our company. But I actually was hired. My first phone interview was 5 days after I got back from the hospital from having a baby.
Wow.
So, yes, and they obviously didn't know that at the time, but so I have the talk about crappy luck, right? You get hired by an amazing company like Wana Brands, and then you're breastfeeding
Uh,
for
but 5 days
so
after giving birth, like you were in it to win it.
in it to win it. But I also think it was kind of a unique opportunity to be. You want to talk about a time that you're most vulnerable and authentic self. It's after giving birth, and so it's probably the most honest job interview I've ever done in my life. And I wouldn't have it any other way. So yeah, but that's the cruel joke for me, is that I get hired onto this amazing company, and the clock's ticking down for me, so eventually I'll be able to partake in Wana products here soon enough, but I'm like, come on, baby, you're good, right?
Right?
You're good? No. So we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. Oh man. Yeah, really. But I imagine, because it's been so long since you've been able to have any phytocannabinoids, that when you do finally get to dig into a bag of gummies, it's going to be very good.
It's going to be amazing. And I will point out, too, so my husband, and I think it's important to talk about this, too. Like, a lot of people talk about postpartum with women, but we don't talk about the dad, right? And my husband had a lot of anxiety after our second kiddo was born. And using the CBD products that we have through Wana Wellness have just helped him immensely, with that struggle. And I just bring that up because I feel like we lose focus sometimes on the focus of postpartum, not just for moms but for dads too.
Yeah.
So that's been fascinating to see play out.
I think that's a really good thing to bring up, because we do forget about that. Even like, I think whenever, somebody is going through a major life change, medical thing, and pregnancy, giving birth is both. And,
Mm-hmm.
whoever's with you and your partner, your husband, wife, even if it's like a dear friend, like if you're single, it's like whoever is your partner through that is going through it just as much as you are.
Absolutely. There needs to be more focus on the caregiver, right? In
Yeah.
these times and in these circumstances. And especially for us, our second kiddo was a pandemic baby.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that the heightened stress that we had in our lives, just in terms of worrying about that on top of pregnancy, was just a lot. It's a big burden, to carry. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's also nice that we're having more conversations about dads being able to stay home after birth as well. I think like when we do
Yeah.
support that, it's another way for us to change the way that men are held to a certain standard as to how they need to show up and be. When we're all human beings, we have these emotions. We should be able to be vulnerable and talk about it. And birth is just as big of a deal, for dads as it is for moms.
Oh, it totally is, and especially because, oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes moms are the sole source of food, right? And become the main source of comfort. And there can be such a divide and this craving for bonding for fathers that gets so overlooked and pushed down by society. And the more that we can just like lean into their experience as well. And like I said, don't get me wrong, we need more support for moms too.
Totally.
But, I got to give a shout out to my husband and the amazing work he's done, through this process too. And just all the dads out there. So,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was just reading.
and partners
And
too. So,
partners too,
but,
yeah. I was just reading about, moms and C-sections, and it's it's the only surgery where you're going through so many layers in the body, and the mom is expected to be up and walking within hours.
It's insane. So I've had 2 C-sections, and it is mind-blowing to me that physical therapy isn't just a requirement after birth. I had to go through several hoops to get to that point. I have chronic lower back pain. Another reason why I'm excited to get back to cannabis here in a little bit. But they're literally cutting through your abdomen, and the fact that we don't have that in place is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
And the expectations that are put on you literally and figuratively postpartum, and it's bananas. So, yeah.
Man. So what made you decide to make the shift into cannabis?
It was a little cart before the horse for me, I think, if that's the right phrase here. My first intentions were, it wasn't first focused on cannabis. So I've been working in the film industry for about 15 years, and I wore a lot of hats in that industry. And where I found my heart was in the community partnership realm in the film industry. And 2 things came into play. Number one, I realized I'm from Colorado, and I realized I wanted to work for a local company. My previous company was out of state. And then the other part was I wanted to work in an industry where I knew there was potential and openness to have a profound impact on the community we live in and in the community in the workplace. And I got to tell you, when I saw the work that Wana had been doing, I mean, all the pieces fell into place. And the intention by which Wana leads itself by and holds itself to, I knew that it was the place for me. And it was actually during the interview process that I started to realize how much more intrinsically linked I was on a personal level to cannabis. Through talking with our founder, our CEO, Nancy Whiteman. She asked me one day, like, how do you feel personally impacted? And, one part was, I had a grandma that went through cancer, and cannabis really, she had lung cancer, and she did pass away eventually, but cannabis really helped her with a lot of discomfort around nausea and just stimulating appetite, right? But it took a bit to get her to even accept it as a treatment, just because of the stigma that's built around the plant. And then the other part of it is, so on my dad's side of the family, going to prison is like a family tradition, and this is all, intrinsically like also linked to the war on drugs. I see how my family on that side was very much targeted, and in and out of mass incarceration, from very early ages, honestly. And one of my cousins who had been incarcerated on and off throughout his life, actually passed away within 72 hours of being released from prison because he smoked synthetic product, and he died.
Wow.
And you think about the fact that we sit here and say, well, cannabis is illegal, should be wrong. But then there's these other products available that can, severely harm, if not, on worst case scenario, kill you. And so everything's just so out of whack. And I just realized, I want to be a part of, number one, doing what I can to, with the industry, give people a fair shot, that have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs, and have a chance to have equitable access to succeed in the way that anyone else could, right? But and then also just like, I don't know, just like getting rid of that stigma, right? And so there's a lot to it. There's a lot more, and I think that I implore all of us, to really think we all have more of a direct connection and a personal story than we realize at times.
No, it's true. It's true. And, even though having safe access to cannabis won't eliminate all the generational trauma that families go through, it definitely can remove a lot of it for those who have been impacted by the war on drugs.
It absolutely can, and it's a process. It's not anything that's going to happen overnight, right? But 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 that doesn't mean just because it's a difficult journey that we can't start taking the steps to get there, right?
Well, it's in our best interest too.
Absolutely, and so that was a lot of my my motivation and my desire to be a part of working with Wana. I often call, CSR in cannabis, it's like the big show. Like this is the ultimate realm. We have a chance here to, be as proactive as we can, unlike a lot of other industries that are just in full-blown reactivity mode all the time, and really try from the ground up to build a better system and a better way for everyone.
And when I was looking at your bio, I noticed that you were a stage manager.
I was, yeah.
I'm a recovering stage manager.
Oh, yeah. Do you still have? I have to ask. Do you still have like total PTSD when you go to like an event and you see something go wrong and like your body just like your eye just starts twitching when you're like, oh no, this is all going to hell in a handbasket.
I watch everything. If I go to an event, I'm like looking at the execution of it. I went to see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child last weekend, and it's been like 15 years since I've called the show, and I was still watching everything and like looking at the scene changes and see how they were doing everything.
Oh, it's a blessing and a curse. I tell you what, it makes us really good at tackling bureaucratic bullshit.
It does.
But it does make it hard to just go out and enjoy a concert or a night at the theater, I got to tell you. And like, there's like when you can deal with the high maintenance of working in production and working in that realm, I honestly think it's kind of like working in the service industry, right? It prepares you for anything and everything and all the curveballs, and you don't have time to just stop and give up. You got to keep going, right? So I really do credit that background. And also I worked in nonprofit for about 8 years, and that background, it's like, it gives you the epitome of like the word scrappy.
Yeah.
Like, and so I am grateful for it every day. And actually, it's really funny that you mentioned that, because one of the shows that I stage managed, so here in Colorado, we have a venue called Red Rocks Amphitheater.
My husband's played it many times. He's played with Further for many years.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So I was stage managing a movie night actually up there one time, and the movie was Pineapple Express.
Oh,
and
right on.
It was amazing, but we were about to start the film, and this torrential thunderstorm came in, and it was the only time, and I think it might even still be to this day, that the movie night, it's called Film on the Rock, that it had to cancel. And if you can imagine the chaos of getting an audience full of Pineapple Express audience fans out of Red Rock Amphitheater quickly and safely, it was quite like that. To me is like the epitome of herding cats. Yeah. And we did it, and actually right when we got everybody cleared out and they left, the power actually went down. So we made the right call, but yeah, so it's a wild ride, that industry, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, it gives you a unique skill set. It's very exhilarating. It was like, I was, when I got home from the play, I went with my best friend. He had tickets, and I was talking to Jeff when I got home, and he's like, what was it like? I'm like, it was amazing. But then you see all these different changes, and I'm thinking, I'd be like, and the headphones going, Q1 through 78. Go, 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 go.
Oh man. See, I was always the one that was like, cause we'd have a band player, we'd have, I used to do a lot of like coordination when we'd have like a film night, and we'd have like, a guest talking, and they're usually like a pretty important guest. Right. And so how do you tactfully tell an A-list celebrity to shut up and get off the stage? Like that's always fun.
But they expect it from us.
They do. They want to be guided through, but there have been some times. I'll just say that.
Yeah. I've been there, especially when there's people who have egos. And when I was younger, I might have had a little bit of a temper.
Oh, me too. Which is why it's so weird that we're like moths to a flame to this work. That like, really is not healthy for people with great tempers, right? I don't know why I got engaged, but I feel like, my years of childcare and nannying actually really came into, brought me into my own with talent wrangling and stage managing too, and on a more serious level, just learning how to be respectful of different voices and opinions and ideas and perspectives. To be honest with you, like working with kids was huge, and also they're by default working with their parents who all have different styles, right, as well. So
Oh, yeah.
um so like I kind of feel like we're all still children in this world, and let's take a step back and just know that everybody has their vulnerability, everybody has that sense of wonder, and let's just lean into that a little bit and talk to each. There was a great group that just did some sexual harassment training for us here at Wana Brands called the Safe Institute, and they're based out of Austin, Texas, and they have this rule that's the platinum rule instead of the golden rule, which is treat others as they want to be treated, not treat others as you would want to be treated. And I just think that that was like a beautiful way of putting it.
That's awesome. That's yeah, exactly. I was actually just having some reflections the other day because I'd had an interaction with somebody who wasn't upset at me, but was frustrated at things that were going on around us. And the way they reacted really surprised me because normally they're a very calm and warm person. And I had to kind of step back and go, wait a minute. We've been going through almost 3 years of all of this stuff with the pandemic, on top of the fact that though cannabis is fun and interesting and growing, it's also really challenging to be in it,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a sole proprietor. And along with just all the other things that are going on in our world that are baked in, and then just our day-to-day stresses, it's like taking a step back and having to remember. You don't think it'd be hard to, but we get so caught up in ourselves. Like, just be compassionate. Like, people are going through
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. And especially in our industry, right? You think about how many of us have trauma in our origin stories,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't really hold a lot of space because we're all so busy doing the good work that I think a lot of times we forget to acknowledge what we've all been through to get to where we are in this industry. And that's a lot to unpack. I mean, I know a bit about your story, right? And like I know I know that there's like difficult. I know stories from a lot of folks that are out there in the social equity world as well, where there is a lot of trauma, be it medical, be it racial bias and oppression, that we're all working through on a day to day, and then also having to like put on a happy face and do business, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult, and I actually am really think that as we get there, we need to start thinking about the mental health care of the folks that are doing this sort of work day in and day out, because there's a lot of trauma that they're having to unpack on a day to day basis.
It's true. I mean, I was just a couple months ago, I was talking with former head of the RNC, Michael Steele, on the podcast, and he was surprised when I told him that in California, we've had a lot of suicides of farmers because of just,
Yeah.
these are people who have grown cannabis for years and made a living on it, and all of a sudden it's not as viable anymore, and they're not getting the support that they need. And their work and it's wonderful, and there's so much heart in it. And to see, people just so full of fear and despair that they're making these choices, we really do need to do a lot more to support people, and to get our policymakers to understand that, you know, there's room for both small and large business, and actually it's really important that they're both there to create the
Hmm.
variety and to be able to learn from one another. But we have to do more to support our smaller farmers and the small and makers. And also, I mean, California just this past week, or the last week, Governor Newsom said that he was removing the cultivation tax, but then he's tacking on more to the excise tax, which doesn't help anybody.
We'll just take it over here and put it over there and, call it a day.
Switch the pot, but we're still getting the same in the end.
Oh my goodness.
It,
Well, you touched on something. Sorry to
oh, no,
cut you off,
no.
but you're spot on, and I actually think does need to be a lot more awareness around suicide. In that, I think it's something like our industry hits on something like 4 or 5 industries beneath it that are actually in the top 10 suicide risk occupations. You look at agriculture, manufacturing, packaging, and I'm forgetting the fourth one, but that is alarming to me.
Yeah.
And it tends to be, I think it's predominantly, but obviously not just, usually males, 25 to 55. So there's a lot of high risk things getting flagged for that are in our industry that are related to mental health, and there needs to be more focus on that. And I actually really love the work of ACAM, which is Dr. Rachel Knox and her.
Yeah, they're
And
wonderful.
amazing, and talk about a fangirl moment. And they have really been trying to elevate all of our consciousness to this idea of health equity and how social equity is a part of this bigger idea of health equity, which includes things like access to education and food and physical health, mental health. And I just think that is so important because I think that we have this tendency, we all want to fix things, we all want to do good. You know that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Yeah.
And we're losing sight of these things. Like, number one, these issues are not going to be a one-stop fix like situation. There's a lot of different areas that need to be serviced in order to truly get us all to a place where we're all not only in an equitable environment, but just health, right? And so I think we need to look back at this holistically and ensure that, while we're all working on capital, right, access to capital for folks, are we thinking about access to food and education and mental health along the way too? And to your point about policy and like that's a part of capital too when you get into taxation, right? Like that
Right.
has a huge impact. And so there is so much more than just writing a check that needs to be happening right now. And I really applaud them for the work that they're doing in that realm and hope that more people go down the rabbit hole and research the work they're doing because it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, the Knox family has just done so much amazing work. And I'd add, like, on top of health equity and social equity, looking at giving people, I mean, we talked a little bit about generational trauma, but there's also just what we learn generationally, how to show up and how we create our reality. And part of that too is like you can get the cash, and it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
but you can. And
Mm-hmm.
you can get everything set up. But then when we're looking at sustainability, and like you, I came from a nonprofit background, and the last nonprofit I worked with, we talked about generational wealth and changing people's
Mm-hmm.
relationships with money so that they can actually have assets to pass down from generation to generation. Because as we've seen, families that have generational wealth, they've been doing asset building, future generations succeed more because they have a soft place to fall. They have something to back them up with. And, a lot
Right.
of people who are grown up, especially like in Black and brown communities and especially first generation communities, sometimes have been living in a time of, how would you say it, where, money is tight and so you spend it when you have it. And to be able to have the tools to look at it in a new way and be able to be a little bit more creative with how you create assets to pass down from generation to generation and create that security and just more a financial awareness, financial education, because I think we all
Yeah.
need it. But, if you grew up in a family where you were living paycheck to paycheck, you learned how to survive that way. And there are just so many more tools for us in our toolkits that we need access to succeed.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much I want to say on that. Financial literacy is just so important, and I am very frustrated with this false hope narrative that we're selling BIPOC communities, where it's like, get your license and then it's all good. Then you're going to be a gazillionaire. Like, that's not how this works, And it may not be the most razzle dazzle snazzy thing to support, but we're really turning a focus towards education because that financial literacy and just business acumen is paramount to success, right?
Yeah.
And I come from a background where I was the lucky one. I grew up in a red line neighborhood. I had, divorced parents. I'm the only one in my family. Well, my mom and my aunt did end up getting college degrees right about the same time I did.
Oh, that's cool. Did you have a party together?
Well, we didn't have a party together, but it was my mom beat me by a semester. So it was really cool though to just be like, it's all happening. But there's just so often like there's this idea that like you gotta be the entrepreneur to be the success. You gotta be the star athlete to be the success. You gotta be the movie star to be the success. When there are so many other places in all of these industries that need people, want people, and that people can be a part of the industry and create that generational wealth without winning the golden ticket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like we need to stop. If you want to be an entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur. But not everybody has that desire, and we need to stop selling that as the only pathway to success and to generational wealth in our industry, because that is not the case. And like we just need to offer more opportunity and education around this. And yeah, don't get me started. It's just, I see in my own family, the other thing that we're fighting is a stigma within Black and brown communities about the plant itself. And we've seen so much harm done to our families because of the war on drugs that, it's almost like, keep that away from me because I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I know what happened to other people in our family with that. Right.
Right.
And so there's a lot of stigmas and a lot of self-hatred that we're working through as well. And so, yeah, I often like to tell people too, it's like, okay, for a minute, put a little sticky note over the word cannabis. How would you tell anybody else in any other industry that they're going to succeed?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need education. You're going to need a network. And yeah, you're going to need capital too. But like, these are the steps, and these are some really tangible areas that we can have impact that is sustainable, to your point of the word sustainable. Like, that's the end goal here, right?
Mm-hmm. The only thing is that you got to throw a compliance officer in there too.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah. And then, by the way, you're going to learn it all for one state, and then you're going to go to the next market, and good luck. So it's kind of funny. And that is actually something I would want to say to anybody, because I know you mentioned that you do have a lot of folks that are in the industry that listen, but you have a lot of folks that are not in the industry that are listening to your show. Right. And I do want to throw out there, like, I'm newish to the industry, although I guess they say that it's like dog years for cannabis. So technically it's been over a year for me. So I guess that's like 7 years at this point.
Truth.
But Nancy always says that. I got to give credit to that. But, it's overwhelming, and it's like, because they intended it to be overwhelming and scary. Like, that's the point of all of this policy, and just like over, like it's an overcorrect, right? And like and so yeah, you might be intimidated by it, but everybody is learning. Nearly everyone is new. This industry is so new, like, don't be intimidated by that. Just go into it open to learning, open to knowledge, open to, asking questions. And please listen, don't talk at people, because everyone has so much to offer and to share in this industry. And more than any other industry I've been into, they're actually willing to share. So I wanted to do a quick plug about that, because if anyone's thinking about joining, step right in, the water's fine.
Yeah, that's it. And there are a lot of amazing people that are more than happy to share knowledge and be supportive, because we've we've all been there. Like stepping into this work, whether you did it in the time of legalization or before, is always,
Right.
it's challenging. Like I remember 10 years ago when I got, well, it's over 10 years now, when I got into the industry, we were, well, first off, I was like, for me, I was looking at it as a temporary thing after cancer when I decided to go back to school. And so I was like, well, at that time I was like, I'm just going to do it and not really talk about it because I'm just really curious and interested. And that was when you didn't say you worked for a cannabis company a lot of times because people would look at you very strange. Now, in the past, I've actually had to leave parties because somebody is like just wanting to like have my ear for the whole evening. And I'm like, I'm not at work. But back then we worried about, raids from the DOJ. And now, because of the way, banking is still all fakakta, it's like we have some really dangerous situations for companies that are working in cash and for, the people who are visiting dispensaries and people know that, they have cash on them. And that's just like, I just think about now where if you work in a dispensary, at least in the Bay Area, I'm sure other places have too, we've had a lot of issues with crime in the pandemic and places either getting robbed after hours or sometimes being held up with somebody in there. And that wasn't really an issue in the days when we were, worried about the feds. And I was just telling someone the other day, I'm like, it's really scary because I thought that anticipating a DOJ raid was scary, but I can't even imagine, like, at least, like, that you're going to get through it. Whereas, with the stuff that's going on now, it's, anything can happen and people have been hurt or died. And really, like, the federal government needs to understand that they're holding our safety in their hands. And if they're collecting taxes from us, they should be protecting us by offering us what they offer every other business.
Absolutely agree, and of course it's the people on the front lines that are the most at risk, right?
Right.
And being asked to sacrifice their lives for somebody else's business, or just their well-being, right? And it's, I that's like a whole other episode.
Yeah,
Sarah.
it is really.
Like,
I know.
I mean, it is mind-boggling to me. This is, I actually think it's interesting when I work with a lot of nonprofits that get concerned about the implications of working with a cannabis company. And I often remind them, they're not worried about you. They're worried about us, and them being the government, right? And it's like, if they're going to come after anybody, they're going to come after the cannabis company. And so like, it's just, it really is a shame, kind of getting back to like, we're paying taxes. We want to be good global citizens. And there's still this stigma that we're having to fight through because of it being federally illegal. And it's just a shame that we can't help our own community. We're often, a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit, stunted in our ability for some folks to be able to give in the community as well, in the ways that they want to give, all because of, bureaucratic bullshit, to be honest.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. I remember reaching out to nonprofits to support them and having them, that they need the support, but they're reluctant to take the donations or the help. And how, because let's talk about your programs, because you help a lot of people. And how do you break through to let them know that, it's nothing but, good thoughts and help, and it's not going to get them in trouble. And how do you get them to accept help, and how is everything working for you? Because you have a really rich program.
We're lucky to be in Colorado, and thank you for that. We're lucky to be here in Colorado where we've been around for a while, right? And so there have been some opportunities for folks to test the waters and see that the world didn't burn down, working with cannabis companies. And quite honestly, even in the last year, so much has shifted and so much openness has happened with folks being willing to accept a partnership with us. And, that has really helped is honestly just, I mean, I know it's not like an exact answer, but it's sort of just try and see what happens. And what a shock. Nothing, no scary monster came out and destroyed everyone. You know what I mean? And, it's also working with just like-minded nonprofits that are open to exploring partnership with cannabis companies. But yeah, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of conversation, and a lot of honesty and vulnerability to, trying to think of like a good example to share. My mind is just like spacing right now, but and then you can kind of get creative with your giving. I think about groups like that work with nonprofit entities or foundations, right, to set up giving programs that way too, that kind of create a barrier as well. And supporting that way, there's Cannabis Impact Fund, which is run by the Kelly Perez and Courtney Mathis, the Cannabis Doing Good folks, and Melanie Rogers, who also used to work with Colorado Expungement or Expunge Colorado. But like they're a great resource too, where, they work with nonprofits directly through their fund to help support causes. So there's a lot of different pathways you can take. I think that, I have to acknowledge that Wana comes from a place of privilege and that we've been around a long time and our reputation is there to help get these partnerships going. But that doesn't mean that there's, still folks that are not open to it. I have been kindly shown the door a few times. But more and more, the conversation is they're open to having that dialogue, and more often than not, it does end with a partnership.
What are some things for people who want to put together a corporate responsibility program for their companies? Like, what are some things that people should really keep in mind when they're assembling that?
The main thing I would stress, well, two things, is don't forget about your internal team. Like, we all get very focused on thinking about the world at large and how we're going to change the world at large, right? And then there's this tendency to neglect the needs of your internal community at your company. And so that's one piece I wanted to throw out there. The other thing is that you're going to need to you got to start from a place of honesty. So I highly encourage folks to do a bit of a self check-in and see where you're at, and see, because you can't know where you're growing to until you know where you're starting from.
Right.
And so taking some time to, again, not always like the snazziest thing to focus on, but you got to look at the data. You got to look at what your track record is. You got to take the skeletons out of the closet and just be honest about where there's room for opportunity to grow and be better. And also probably the biggest thing is are you listening to what your community actually needs, or are you assuming to know what the community needs? Because I see that a lot where
That's
people
a really good point.
Yeah, people will say, "Oh, well, I read an article in the New York Times, and now I know everything about this." And it's like, okay, good for you. I'm glad I read that too. That's great. But did you talk to the local nonprofit about this?
Yeah.
And hear what they really need. We just did a great program for 420 called Forward 20 that was focused on weeding out hunger.
I was just going to ask you about that. How did that go?
It went really well. So we made a really strong effort, and we did, not just an effort, we did support local. We wanted to keep it hyper local, even though it was a national campaign. And so we supported 14 unique nonprofits around the country with a fiscal grant of $10,000 for each nonprofit. And we really made an effort to keep these two groups that were pretty grassroots, where that money could go far. But the other thing, and I think this is a great example of listening to the community versus assuming what they need. How many times, Sarah, have you been, like, it's Thanksgiving time and you see like a food donation bin out there in the world, right?
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, so many of these nonprofits were, we were offering it. We're like, we'll have a donation bin and dispensaries, and we'll get you all the canned food. And they actually said, please don't. We have food wholesalers we work with who can help us with that. And honestly, if you can help raise money for us, that's going to provide and go a lot further than someone's leftover soy sauce that's been sitting in their fridge for, 8 years unopened.
Or an old can of corn.
Can of corn. I don't even know how many cans of like pumpkin are sitting at food pantry
Oh
around the
no.
country. But it's true. It was a humbling moment to say, oh, okay, you know what? You're right. Like it would have looked great for us, right? That's the photo op for people. Is here's our food donation bin, right? But in the reality was that wasn't what the need was, and so we pivoted and we did virtual virtual donation drives for them, which is, cash donations in conjunction with our $10,000 grant. And we were able to support some amazing nonprofits like a group called Health in the Hood down in Miami, Oasis Projects in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Supermarket out in LA, which is working on putting together a storefront supermarket in a food desert neighborhood. All sorts of amazing nonprofits around the country. And just the impact was huge. And we often forget, too, in the time of 420, that, kids are about to be out of school for the summer. Those free lunch programs are ending. This is actually a time when food banks need a lot of support. And that was just kind of serendipitous that happened. And we helped fill a need that was there. And it was really special to do that.
That's awesome. What are you working on? Well, actually, before I say that, that was a really good point that you made about this time of year and kids, because I don't think people think about that as much. They just think about year round, but that's so impactful.
It really is. And, I was a kid that was on free lunch program, right? And summer's kind of rough and your fridge isn't full. And so, yeah, a little plug for that. Support some food banks this summer. Because this is the time when a lot of families need it. Schools are such a resource for kids to get nutrition. So, yeah, do what you can.
Yeah.
I'm all about plugging nonprofits where I can, Sarah.
Oh, me too. I totally hear that. It's so important that we do and that we support them, because I think a lot of times people don't understand how hard it is for nonprofits, especially in times when priorities shift, as far as like, you don't ever think about, what's the hot nonprofit that people are supporting this year. But I remember working in civil rights where it was like, there were some years, especially like when President Obama got elected, and all of a sudden our funding started to dry up, and they're like, we have a black president, civil rights are no longer an issue. And I was like,
my goodness.
Talk to the team about that.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually similar. I heard some similar stuff from some of our partners in the LGBTQIA sector, in recent times, where they're like, we are really happy and amped that people are focusing on racial justice, and that should not stop. But please don't forget about us too.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that then in the last few months we've seen this like horrible, just hatred just being just spewed out at the LGBTQ community right now, right? And it's like you get distracted from focusing on a cause, and all of a sudden, the assholes swoop in and see an opportunity to undo things. So, forgive my language, but it's the truth. We got to stay vigilant with this stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh no, we're on Radio Misfits Network. You can say whatever you want.
Okay. Okay, great. I love, what's so funny is like because I nannied and babysat for so long, I always was really good at like having like a very clean mouth around the kids. But then I would just like let it fly when I get off work. And I actually think of Julie Andrews a lot, because she's infamous for that, where she has this like super clean image, but apparently she's got like the mouth of a sailor, which I just love. I love knowing that.
That is fun. I would love to hear her.
Right, just going for it. Oh my God. So,
that's hilarious. What are you working on now, and what are you excited about in the future?
So one thing that I'll kind of tease now, although it's not a tease, it's really important, and we should all be talking about this, is, getting back to equity, right? And getting back to like, how do we actually make a difference in the world beyond just that check that we're writing to places? And a big part of that comes from empowering the individual, thereby empowering the community at large. And one of the biggest ways we can do that is through voting.
Yes.
And so, for us, it's like, look, we can do the policy. I'm on policy committees, I'm doing that work where I can for the company. But at the end of the day, we need fair access to voting education, voting registration. And if we as a company can support that, we're going to make that happen. And so we're really excited to be working with groups like the League of Women Voters and with the Cannabis Voter Project, not only this summer, but just, on a year-round basis to increase voter education and registration and just awareness of what's on your ballot. And so that's a big thing that I'm very excited about. And I'm really excited that it is the League of Women Voters, because I think that it's a group that like a lot of people are comfortable with. And I think that it speaks volumes when you take a group that's a nonpartisan group and you pair that with cannabis, and there's just a level of openness that comes through with that, and acceptance on both sides, right? An acknowledgement that we're all working together here towards the same cause, which is a more just and equitable world. And so why not come together and bring voter registration to places where people, feel most comfortable, be that their local dispensary or a library or, and so it's I'm really excited to be a part of that and be working with them on that.
That's awesome. And I think it's really important to have the conversation around, I was just thinking about this the other day, with women's rights, and, being politically active and voting and having our voices being heard. I mean, when I was born, women couldn't have a credit card on their own. We haven't been allowed to vote for it's been a very short time since we were allowed the right to vote. And we have to really, really be aware of that and exercise it to the best of our abilities.
We really do. And they're coming for not just our reproductive rights, but they're coming for our voter rights too. And we have to be vigilant, and there is so much more power in your vote than people realize. But I think we all did get a bit of a wake-up call during the last election, right?
For sure.
So you can see the power of your voice play out. But you mentioned how people, when Obama got elected, they were like, okay, cool, we're done, we're good now, right? And we're not done. We're not close to done.
We're just getting started.
We are just getting started. And, policy is intimidating, voting is intimidating, but it doesn't have to be if we lean on each other for the resources and the education to equip and empower ourselves through those decisions and through the process, right?
Right.
And everyone, if you have the ability to vote, use it. Not just for yourself, but for the people around you. If you're somebody who makes donations or does things for charity or for your community and you're not voting, I mean, come on, what's going on? That is the number one thing you can do to make your community a better place, is share your voice with our legislators, right?
Right.
So, so I'm really hoping too, that we can appeal to some younger voters too that maybe were missing or that are just kind of disenchanted by the process as well. So that is going to be a really big focus on us for us moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we're really excited about is starting to expand our impact in education and supporting education where we can, in cannabis education, and just helping to empower folks with knowledge, because as cheesy as it is, you remember those posters from when we were kids, like knowledge is power. It's true. And so, yes, we're supporting, entrepreneur programs, and, yes, we're supporting, a lot of things, but we also need to be supporting education. That is so important.
Well, as an educator, I totally back that.
And we need more love for education.
Yeah.
That's where I am. That's why I'm where I am, and where other parts of, members of my family are not where I am. It completely comes down, a big part of it is education. Some of it's luck, some of it's circumstance, but I can tell you that, my life changed when I happened to get, opted into a better school district as a kid when they were doing all the busing and, all that stuff. So, that changed my life. And I know that I would be on a much different trajectory without access to education. And, obviously we're looking more at higher education platforms, but those opportunities and that possibility of changing the trajectory of life through higher education is huge. And we really want to be a part of supporting that system and helping people to achieve their goals through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when you have access to education, you get to see the world through different lenses, which creates critical thought, which is something that is so very needed. It always has been, but even now more than ever, I believe.
Now more than ever. And, we just need, yeah, you said it perfectly. I can't say it better than that.
So if people want to follow you on social media, you, the company, and seeing what you're doing, what's the best way for our listeners to do that?
Yeah, and we are going to have some exciting news I can't talk about quite yet, but some cool stuff, especially in the realm of CSR coming out here in the summer. So please do follow us. So you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, just Wana Brands, at symbol Wana Brands. I'm a mom now, so I can be geeky about how I'm saying this, the handle, if you will. And also find us on LinkedIn. We share a lot of great news on LinkedIn. And I'm honestly not that social media savvy.
What?
So I know. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'll be the cool mom that you can. I'll get back to it when my kids are a little bit older.
Oh, I gotta say, it's not fun time all the time. It can, social media, as studies have shown, it can cause anxiety and stress. So good on you for being able to do without.
Yeah, that's why honestly I had to back away. I think it was after my first kid. I was just going down that total everybody else is so happy, and I'm just sitting here on my couch with a 9-week-old withering away, and I was like, I gotta stop. This is not reality. This is a terrible idea. And so I shut everything down at that point in time. Went into ghost mode, if you will. But I am on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. Though I do need to get better habits of posting and what have you. Honestly, a lot of why I haven't been posting too much is that I still feel like I'm in listening mode with a lot of the folks that are out there, and just trying to absorb what people are saying, and it's just fascinating.
Well, it is, and I have to give you props for that too, because there are people who have been in the industry for just a minute. And sometimes, and I believe that everybody has a voice and should be heard. And sometimes I'm kind of like, are you listening? Are you
coming in a little hot there?
Yeah, exactly. Trying to reinvent the wheel, son?
Yeah, and a lot of my work look like, and this is just a fault of mine, and honestly of a lot of women, right, and a lot of women of color. I'm not good at selling myself, and where my heart is and where my head is in the work. And so, talk to me, have a conversation with me if you want to share an idea with me, and I'm more than happy to do that. But yeah, I don't want to be like that person that comes in and acts like I know everything, because quite honestly, this is a long journey for us, and it's a long journey for everyone. And we are very much in the discovery phase. And there are short-term things you can do to make a huge difference. But our long-term trajectory and of where we're going is like a work in progress, but is getting there. Thanks to some of the amazing community partners that we've been working with, like Cannabis Doing Good or New Project or our academy out there in California. And, and like, the amazing work like Tahir Johnson's doing with the USCC. And so, thanks to those folks, and those organizations for helping us to like map out where we need to go and how we can best support our communities, both internally and externally.
Well, Karla, I gotta say, you do actually have like a lot to talk about because what you and Wana are doing for the programs is just, it's wonderful and it's great inspiration for other people. I mean, when we were in medical cannabis times, there was a lot more community engagement and giving. And I feel like in this time of, and I'm going to throw my org psych hat on right now, in our time of storming, norming, and reforming of this industry, we have to remember our roots and remember that, because this is a new industry, we can actually look at doing business in a whole new way, which is really like looking at real ways that we can humbly support our communities that resonate for them, that truly help. So thank you for bringing that conversation to the table.
Absolutely. And thank you for being open to having it. Right. And truly, Sara, my end goal here is if there, it is to pay it forward. And if there are other, companies that want to chat about collaboration or ideas about how to get this stuff off the ground, we're an open book. The point isn't to hoard this knowledge and keep the good just limited to some of the stuff we're doing. Let's all work together.
Yeah.
Let's pull our powers together. I often quote, and half the time people know what I'm talking about and half the time they don't, and they think I sound like a crazy person, but I often quote, like, it's like Captain Planet with our powers combined, right? Like, let's...
I love it.
I'm a true, like, 80s, 90s kid, so the cultural... the pop culture references are abound, but it's the truth. Like, we can do so much more if we're working together and we're all clear on the direction we're going in and not just working in a vacuum. And so if I had like one wish is like, and to, like you said, like the industry has that desire already, but let's foster it and let's keep it going.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for being a fighter for that and really keeping that on the forefront because, in the midst of all the struggles people are going through, we need to keep our heart. And even if, companies can't monetarily give, there are other ways that they can support their communities and also create plans for the future when they're able to do more as they grow and become more sustainable. And I think it's just super important.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. If I'm not taking up too much time,
No,
I just was going to mention, we actually donated a bunch of laptops to some restorative justice nonprofits because they needed laptops, right? Or we had some extra PPE just sitting in our warehouse, like a lot of it, that we were able to donate to a great nonprofit called Project Cure that actually gave medical supplies to folks most recently. They support folks all over the world, but most recently in Ukraine. And also gave a partial donation to this great nonprofit called Project Vet that supports veterinary clinics around the world as well. And so it's not just fiscal donations, right? It's the stuff you have sitting in the back room that you think nobody needs. Someone needs it. And just get it to a place where someone could use it. So there are so many avenues. You can volunteer your time. We just did Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver build day with our team. Like, there's a lot of things you can do that make a profound impact and change people's lives. Just something that feels so small to you, it can feel so huge to someone else.
Yeah, it's important to know that. I mean, I think that sometimes that's a hard one to keep in the forefront of our minds because we do get so mired in our own lens. But you're right. Something that seems very little to us, or, oh, nobody would want this, it's not necessarily true.
It's not true. And it, don't discount the gift that you have to give. Just give what you can, whether that's time or treasure or talent. Like you have other avenues beyond just the fiscal to support the community around you. I mean, the big one too in our industry is if you have a big network, pass the mic.
Yeah.
Like let somebody use your platform and share some knowledge and some awareness. So there's a lot of different avenues by which you can go. And I do just want to stress one more time, don't forget about lifting up those people on your own team too. And you can give back by creating an amazing work environment for your teams. You mentioned the employees that are at risk with, robberies and because of the lack of safe banking, get a security team.
Yeah.
Like help your, it's not rocket science. Keep your team safe. Make it a happy place that they're coming to work to, where they don't need to feel like they're risking their lives or diminishing their lives to be a part of your business.
Right. And also just from like a professional development standpoint, give them a place to grow to.
Absolutely. And listen to what they want to grow into as
Mm-hmm.
well. I mean, it's so simple. I mean, just having them involved and engaged in training and in conversation and in check-ins is just acknowledging that they're a human and that they're there and that they're an integral part of your team. That's half the battle right there. You know, like so yeah, I gotta plug that, you can do all you want for your community at large, but if you're not taking care of your team at home, you're missing the point.
Yeah. It's kind of like filling the well.
It absolutely.
Karla, it's just been a pleasure talking with you today. I can't believe we haven't met sooner, and I'm really, really excited about continuing the conversation.
Likewise, pandemic problems, Sarah, but we'll get there.
We will.
We'll meet in person.
We will.
We
Thanks
will
so
meet
much.
soon. Thank you so much.
And for those of you listening out there, remember, Planted is twice a month. If you'd like to follow us on social media, on Facebook, we are Planted with Sara Payan. On Twitter and Instagram, we are Planted with Sara. Our website is www.plantedwithsara.com. And if you'd like to follow me on my IG with cannabis education, pictures of my cat and things that I am cooking, I am
Ooh.
Sara Mitra Payan. For all of you out there, it's a crazy world. We're still not out of this pandemic. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. And also stay curious. Until next time, take care, everyone.